How do we define nonverbal communication?
I think it's important to distinguish communication from language because they're very different things. Language is a societal code that we decide, and communication can be hand motions, or there's communications all around it. It's not just a human thing, you know, animals communicate.
I have conversations with people that are only through like facial expressions. And maybe we're not communicating a lot of information, but we're connecting.
The nonverbal communications in my church is vibrant, loud, outgoing. The pastor at my church, he uses his hands, he uses his body, he uses the objects around him. I just feel as though because we have so many members of our church that you have to have different types of communication to allow the word to impact their lives.
Nonverbal communication can backfire a lot too, especially in intercultural contexts. Like Juan Yu and I actually had a lot of misunderstandings at the beginning because my sound for listening is and for him is like scorn or like It's like really dismissive. And so like I would just be doing that and then he would be getting like really, really irritated. I'm like, I had no idea why he was getting upset. And so that just like little things like that are communicating so much.
More than 90% of communication is nonverbal. You know, in your postures, you can totally define somebody else. The way that you talk to them, the way that you don't talk to them, the way that you might cut them off, the way that you give them space. You're telling them way more than a mouthful.
In a language system where there's an extra space after a statement is made, it can come across as arrogant if an American is filling that space with small talk. In the Chinese perspective, it might be like, oh, he's not giving me time to respond, he's trying to dominate. Where Americans will be like, Chinese people are very quiet, they're very shy, generally as a people, and as part of their culture. But that might not be the case.
At my high school, my biology teacher was a very humorous man, and he cared a lot about me, and we had a lot of conversations. What I remember about him is this one gesture. He put his hand on my head and just did like this, and then walked away. For me, this simple gesture meant a lot. It showed his care, his encouragement, somewhat like a father.
A lot of things are actually not said verbally. Even when it is said verbally, it does not necessarily mean it. There's an implicit meaning behind those words. And to better understand a dialogue is you really have to understand the context underneath it. So it's not just communication, but it's not just you saying the words, but you're actually interpreting what that word really means.
Thus, nonverbal communication is the way people unconsciously telegraph their private thoughts and emotion through body movements. What's the importance of nonverbal communication? Our verbal communication would be ineffective if our nonverbal messages did not accompany them. Therefore, verbal communication is both powerful and indispensable. Let's look at some historical facts. In the 5th century BCE, the sophist or a Sophia is one who exercises wisdom or learning, also known as a sage or expert. The rise of democracy at this time led to specialized techniques of persuasion and argument. These techniques included emphasis on hand and body language. John Bueller, an English physician and natural philosopher who studied body and human communication, especially in gestures. His work from 1644 included the natural language of hands, otherwise known as chirologia.
The first scientific research on nonverbal communication and behavior was started in 1872 with the publication of Charles Darwin's book The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals. According to Darwin, humans continue to make facial expressions because they have acquired communicative value throughout evolutionary history. In other words, humans utilize facial expressions as external evidence of their internal state. Although the expression of emotions in man and animals was not one of Darwin's most successful books in terms of its quality and overall impact in the field, his initial ideas started the abundance of research on the types, effects, and expressions of nonverbal communication and behavior. Anthropologist Ray Birdwhistell was the founder of kinesics, the study of human movement as culturally patterned visual communication. Ray Birdwhistell suggested that most human communication occurs through gestures, postures, position, and distance. He described a 65 to 35% split between actions and words. Birdwhistell held that kinetic communication occurs in learned patterns that form systems related to and vary as much as the patterns of spoken language. Another significant figure in the study of nonverbal communication was Edward T. Hall, American anthropologist and cross-cultural researcher. In 1963, he developed the concept of proxemics, a description of how people behave and react in different types of culturally defined personal space. Hall believed that the value in studying proxemics comes from its applicability in evaluating not only the way people interact with others in daily life, but also their organization of space in their houses and buildings, and ultimately the layout of their towns. Personal space describes the immediate space surrounding a person, while territory refers to the area which a person may lay claim to and defend against others. Adam Candon, one of the world's foremost authorities on the topic of gesture. Candon had been impressed by the observation that Birdwhistell had summarized on kinesics and had undertaken a microanalytic study of the organization of the flow of body motion in a single speaker. This demonstrated how speech and bodily action were coordinated. And in 2004, Adam Candon published his book, Gesture, Visible Action as Utterance. The book is probably the most significant contribution to gesture studies to appear since David McNeill's Hand and Mind, and must be ranked among the most important books on gesture to be published in English since David Ephron's book of 1941. Albert Mehrabian is currently Professor Emeritus of Psychology at UCLA, has become known best by his publications on the relative importance of verbal and nonverbal messages.
Mark Knapp, popular for his nonverbal communication studies, especially those pertaining to lying and deception in human interaction. Judith Hall, special interest in gender differences and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication can be categorized by Robert Craig's typology, sociopsychological, the study of thoughts. In the example of a job interview where cause and effect relationships predict whether communication behaviors succeed or fail. Let's take another look at a video describing nonverbal communication.
Hi, I'm Jacob Taxis for About.com. In this video, you will learn 8 types of nonverbal communication. This is information from About.com's psychology site. Number 1. Facial expression. Facial expression is one type of nonverbal communication that is nearly universal in meaning. Though different cultures generally ascribe different meanings to various types of nonverbal communication, the meanings attributed to certain facial expressions like the smile or the frown remain quite similar throughout the world. For example, a downcast look in New York will be a downcast look in Moscow. A smile in Belize will signal happiness or joy just as it would in Barcelona. Number 2. Gestures. Hand gestures are a vitally important type of nonverbal communication that take on various meanings as you navigate the world's cultures. One might immediately think of waving, giving a peace sign, or a thumbs up. One might see a raised index finger to signal that a person's team is number one. Politicians will use specially designed gestures to emphasize points. Number 3. Paralinguistics. Paralinguistics simply means a type of vocal communication without the use of language. This includes voice inflection, pitch, rhythm, loudness, and tone. A slow rhythm and hushed tone might signify gentleness or concern, while heavy pitch and rising inflection might be attributed to anger or enthusiasm. Number 4. Body language. Though body language and posture can be quite subtle, they can have an enormous impact on communication. Crossed arms might signify a closed-off or defensive attitude. Slumped shoulders and excessive leaning might signify boredom. Again, these cues are subtle but powerful. Number 5. Proxemics. Proxemics refers to personal space. Different individuals prefer different distances when it comes to speaking with others. Obviously, standing too close to someone while she or he is talking might bring about feelings of discomfort or annoyance. When speaking to groups, individuals tend to need larger distances in order to feel heard. Number 6. Eye gaze. Eye gazing is a fascinating type of nonverbal communication. For example, the rate of blinking might actually increase and the pupils dilate when friends or loved ones are encountered. This goes for interesting objects as well. The eyes react very differently to outside stimulus depending on personal interpretation. Number 7. Haptics. Haptics simply refers to communicating through touch. Touching is used to signify love, affection, and familiarity. It might also be employed in times of stress or sadness when comfort is needed. The force of a handshake might signify extra enthusiasm between close friends, while a firm, standard grip might be more appropriate for a professional introduction. Number 8. Appearance. Appearance is a very important type of nonverbal communication. Physical appearance, including clothing style and neatness, is the first thing people see when encountering one another. Studies in the area of color psychology suggest that the colors of clothing can have big effects on mood and attitude. People make quick judgments of character according to dress and appearance. Thank you for watching. For more, visit about.com.
What do we predict is the future of nonverbal communication? Think about it, and thanks for watching. By the way, here's some scholarly journals, followed by some sources that were used for this video.